change and the fact that we're doing like almost nothing for it. It seems to me that when we talk about make America great again, it seems to be at the expense of the next generation because we are ramping up the national debt and we are not thinking about not only the health of our environment down the road, because we're doing it at the expense of the environment, but also it's costing our children a lot more down the road in the future. And it seems to me that the one thing that brings us all together, if you're talking about unity, the one thing that will bring us all together, no matter what party, no matter what our background is the future of our children. And I really feel like that's the route we need to go. That's where the party needs to put their emphasis on. I'd like to know how you feel about that and what your ideas are.
So I'm really grateful for the question, because if you want to talk about an existential threat to humanity that exists in climate change, and the climate scientists, consensus of climate scientists has said we only have about 12 years to do something. Now, I'm not optimistic that these next 2 years we're going to get that much done when you have a president that denies climate science. So that comes down to 10 years starting in January of 2020. And so we have to aggressively do something about this problem. These are the specific things we're going to do. On day one, we need to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords because realistically, we punch above our weight. We're 4% of the globe's population, but we produce about 14% of this problem. That means the overwhelming majority of the problem is going to be solved. Other countries have to lead as well. But how can we lead if we're not part of a group of the community of nations that are joined together to do something about this? So number one, I'm going to lead in the world. And I'm going to make sure that we're using our levers to help other countries get onto a pathway of clean power, doing things that we're carbonizing. Here domestically, we've got to lead by example. And that means, as you said, go from doing very little to doing aggressively the kind of things that we know will make a difference. The first is one thing we're going to do to grow our economy. We're going to invest in research and development. We used to be the #1 R&D intensive economy on the planet Earth. We're no longer that. And we need to get back to investing in the technologies, the jobs, the industries of the future. And in this case, battery technology, geothermal, and more is going to help us to make sure we solve the problems. In addition to that, we can do common sense things that are going to grow our economy, like I did when I was mayor. Environmentally retrofitting buildings is going to actually help us to create jobs, union jobs, apprenticeship programs, drive down our energy costs, and lower our carbon footprint to help with this issue. We're going to start giving renewable energy the same kind of tax incentives that we've been giving the oil and gas and extractive industries for so long. It's time we put the incentives where they are. In addition to that, I'm going to reverse a lot of the things that this president did, like the methane mercury rules, the clean power standards, the fuel efficiency standards. There's so much we can do to help people in this country actually expand our economy. I want to say one last thing, because it's irresponsible for me not to tell this. We're going to see a lot of radical change in our country. The electrification of our transportation sector is going to happen. We're going to be transferring off of coal. We can't be the party, though, that looks at truck drivers and coal miners and say, this is an American future that doesn't include you. That's where our party loses. That's where we lose majorities, is because you hear people saying, wait a minute, your party doesn't have me included in your future. And so there's other things that are directly climate related that we have to do in our country. Everybody talks about free college, for example. And I'm one of these guys that has a debt-free college plan, similar to the question that we talked about. But we don't understand that only about 35% of Americans graduate from college. Other countries are blowing past us right now in producing the workers of the future because they don't only look at college. Germany, only 0 to 4% of their to go to college of their median income. But Germany also has said we're going to massively expand apprenticeship programs. And so the jobs of the future don't necessitate a sociology degree like I have from Stanford. They necessitate specific skills training that every American can do. And what they have in Germany and Switzerland is if you lose your job, they don't let you do what we do, is you lose your good paying coal mining job and you end up working in Walmart, and you can't support your family anymore because we all know a Walmart smart salary is not enough to support a family. What do they do in other countries? They say, come to an apprenticeship program where you're going to keep your salary, you're going to continue to earn, and you're going to learn new skills that are directly connected to jobs. And so I'm going to have a clean energy plan for everyone and ways to make sure that we're preparing all Americans for the new economy that's coming as we make these changes.
Question on that side here? Hi, my name is Dikko, and I'm visiting from Nigeria. I want to know your foreign policy, especially related to immigration and terrorism.
So, am I pronouncing this Dikko?
Dikko.
Dikko.
Yeah.
Dikko, thank you very much. It's great to see you here in Nevada, I want to be very specific. We have immigration policies that are betraying our values, and immigration policies that are hurting our economy. We are a nation that has strong immigration. And right now, what is happening since this administration has taken office is we're restricting the flow of even legal immigration. And we're doing things to people coming here into our country that violates our values in the worst way. From putting children in cages, separating families, and denying people even to make legitimate asylum claims. Why do we have the asylum laws that we have? Well, we learned our lessons from World War II when a ship came from Eastern Europe escaping the Holocaust. And we turned the ship around, and everybody on that ship died in the Holocaust. We are a country that said in a bipartisan fashion, we should have a process in which people can present themselves for asylum, and a legal system that can evaluate those asylum claims. We have destroyed that now at our southern border, as people are coming in and are not getting a chance to even present themselves for asylum claims. I will fix that system, make it reflect our values. It doesn't include making sure that we have a strong security at our border, but also values those streams of individuals coming in to escape violence. There's more than that. I ran a city. Right now we've created an environment in America that's making us less safe because immigrant communities are afraid to come forward and cooperate with the police or even report crimes because they're afraid of having their families separated or somebody deported. We now in my community see reports from immigrant communities of crimes going down, lower rates of reporting of domestic violence or even child abuse, because we created an environment where we're trying to make our police officers do the job of immigration enforcement. That's going to stop under my leadership as well. And then finally, as I travel around this country, I'm seeing more and more people from farmers who can't get crops out of their field, to my president of my university, Stanford, who insisted to come see me in Washington. His office reached out to mine and says, the Stanford president must see Cory Booker. And I was really worried, because like, did I not graduate from college? I was really stressing. Did I not get that last paper turned in? This is going to be really embarrassing. But he came to see me and said, Cory, we have a problem. We have people coming from all around the planet Earth, from Nigeria to Thailand, to come into this university and get degrees in things so advanced that half of Congress probably can't spell the degrees, and then as soon as their student visas are over, we drop kick them out of our country. We are doing things that are so hurting our economic well-being, like taking dreamers, who are Americans in every way except for a piece of paper, who add billions of dollars to our economy. I brought a dreamer to the State of the Union address who started a platform where she actually used her internet, her tech platform in the gig economy to employ hundreds of people. And we're going to deport her. So I'm going to have an immigration system that gets back to what we know from Irish Americans and Hungarian Americans and so many of the immigrants in this country who helped build this country and create strength. We're going to get back to returning to seeing immigration as a value and having systems that make sense for our country.
Two more questions.
Me?
Right here,
Okay, I want to ask you about your health care policy.
Yes, please.
And about, do you support Medicare for all? I'm not clear about that from reading your web pages, and if so, how would you finance it, especially in the first few years when it's going to be pretty messy to make that transition? And how does that fit with something that has drawn criticism in your policy, and that is the filibuster policy in the Senate? And are you in favor of, really in favor of maintaining the filibuster? And if so, how are you going to get health care reform through?
I think that was 6 questions.
No, but I like that. I like that. Okay, real quick. I believe health care is a right in America, and we need to get to the point where that is the case. I believe if we were going to design a system that's broken, we would design the system we have right now, because we pay the most money of any other nation on the planet Earth, about 18% of our economy, to get the worst outcomes for any developed nation. It's crazy, and you all know why. Most of that money is not going to patient care. Most of that money is going to different people who are profiting off of a broken system. And so I support that value that all Americans, Republican, Democrats, Independent, that in this country, everyone should have access to affordable, quality health care. The question is, how do we get there? I do believe in Medicare for all. I think it's the best system to get there. But hold on, she asked this right question, because any presidential candidate comes up to you and wants to throw a slogan out there in order to get an applause line, you should say exactly what she did. How are you going to do it, Cory Booker? And unless, of course, her name is not Cory Booker, don't say that. This is very simply, very practically, we cannot get there by flipping a switch. No, not just because of the filibuster, but because we have about 150 million Americans who have private health insurance with their employer, that they're very happy with that health insurance. Another 40 million people who have bargained for their health insurance as well. And so this has got to be a process, a pathway to getting there. And there's things I could do in my first term as president that will get tens of millions of people more health care, and these are the things I'm going to talk about. Number one is we can start saying, instead of going right to Medicare for all, we can get Medicare for all who want it by creating a public option. We were one vote away in the Senate from just lowering Medicare eligibility to 55. What would that do? It would give a lot of people who are without health care right now a good option. It would also give private insurance the chance for people who are older to join Medicare to lower the age of the private insurance pools, which would make that cheaper. It's common sense things that we can do to lower our cost and expand access. I'll give you another one. Prescription drugs in this country are outrageously, unconscionably, and immorally high. They are. And we're not doing the common sense things we could do to lower those drugs, which would help the overall cost of healthcare in this country go down. These are two of the ideas that I have, that if I'm president, I'll bring them from ideas to reality. Number one, just use Medicare's bulk buying as a way to negotiate down prices. It's a very common sense way to get much cheaper drugs, not just for people in Medicare, but for other people as well. But here's the stickler that I love. I had to manage something. When I worked on management, I said there are 3 keys to being a great manager called accountability. The first part of accountability is having clear standards. Number 2 is having ways of measuring progress towards those standards. And the final way is having consequences for failure. Now, we have a standard. There should be fair cost of prescription drugs. A way to measure that is to try to create more transparency so we can see why some of these folks are raising their prices. Do they really need to raise those prices, or is this just people profiting off of more pain? But here's the kicker of the consequences for failures to meet our standards of affordable drugs. Because other countries do this, but I'm going to do it with a stick more than they do. Other countries have laws that you can't raise your price of a drug in their country that's higher than the cost of the drug in other places. So right now in America, we have drugs, same manufacturer, here in this country, is way higher, 2, 3, 4, 5x, sometimes 25x than it is in other countries. If I am your president, the law of our land is going to be, if you're a drug company and you do that, we're taking away your patent, and we're going to let generics come in and undercut your cost. Hold on. I want to jump right in because there's more. I got in trouble for saying this in New Hampshire. I'm going to risk saying it here. So prepare yourself. If somebody is offended by this, come up to me and tell me afterwards. We in America have to stop doing stupid. And in our healthcare system, we do a lot of stupid. And what I mean by that is this. What is cheaper? What is driving costs? To give a woman access to prenatal care, access to doulas, and the kind of things we know, lower the cost of healthcare overall for that mother and that child, not to mention driving down the rates of maternal mortality and infant mortality. We do things in this country where we don't provide adequate healthcare to people until they go to the hospital when it's most expensive. And that includes something that we should talk about a lot more, which is mental health care. What is more expensive? I obsess over data. When I was mayor, I used to say, in God we trust, everybody else bring me data. I want to see the numbers. And so the numbers are clear. Entire cities have done the study. Seattle did it. What was more expensive, having mentally ill homeless people on the streets or putting them into supportive housing? Where do mentally ill homeless people end up when they're often on the streets? Jail and hospitals, emergency rooms. So Seattle just they ran the numbers. And they found out they could save their taxpayers millions of dollars by just putting them in a supportive housing. Yes. Our healthcare system right now is designed to treat disease and illness, and fine, we should have a healthcare system to do that. But we could save a lot of money if we started turning our healthcare system to invest in preventative care, early intervention, and early detection. I am a mayor. I had to cut my city's budget 25%, and we still let ourselves out of a recession to our biggest economic development period. God, let me be your president. There's too much stupid being done. There's too much stupid being done in Washington. I will end stupid. We will invest where we should. We have a potential to have a better healthcare system.
One last question. I didn't have time for photos. back.
In the back. Where, how far in the back? There we go.
Right here.
And hold on. Are you saying one last question because my people are telling you?
Yes.
Okay, so then we're going to do 3 more
Do
questions.
what I
Because when you run for president, they tell you what to do all the time. And I'm like, I'm running for president for crying out loud. You're not the boss of me. So we're going to do 3 more questions because you guys have great questions. And I see people with like Moms Demand Action shirts there. I really hope we get the chance to talk about gun violence.
We're waiting for you.
All right. Welcome to Reno, Senator.
It is good to be back in Reno.
I'm actually a Reno native, which is extremely rare.
Wow.
And, yeah, see the hands? I'm glad that you talked about what I would categorize as the public health approach. And I'd like to talk about it in the realm of the criminal justice system. I love that everybody is talking about criminal justice reform. What I feel is absent from the conversation is the 400,000 children that are in the foster care system today, the additional kids that are in the juvenile justice system. I actually worked in juvenile justice reform, and I traveled the nation, and I saw, we have a decentralized system. It's very challenging from, the federal standpoint. But what would you do in terms of policy changes, administrators at, Office of Justice programs, ACF, those kind of places, and, do you see that kind of linkage that hurt people hurt people? And we have a lot of hurt children in this country, and I just don't feel like they get the attention that they really deserve, and they really are driving some of the deep end involvement that we see in the criminal justice system today.
Teresa.
Teresa, I am giving you a long distance hug on that question. So I told you where I live, which is in a low-income inner-city Black and brown community, and my loyalty to that community. And behind my desk in the United States Senate is a map of one of our lowest income census tracts. Last census was $14,000 per household. It was the census of the neighborhood I was living in. The first people elected in office. And it really bothers me that people do not talk about childhood trauma enough in this country. Because you can link so many of the challenges we have as a country, from economic challenges to criminal, for crime, to educational attainment, to undiagnosed child trauma, and untreated childhood trauma. And I see this manifesting in horrific ways, as you said. A completely broken criminal justice system, one that takes parents away from their children for the stupidest of things. I'm going to get in trouble for using that word, because I didn't know. Okay, so I will make my sins for like. So I will appeal for my sins. I'll use a better word. We do things that are so counterproductive in our society. Let me give you an example. We have debtors' prisons in America. My friend Brian Safinson says we have a nation that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than poor and innocent. Because we have people who get locked up for unpaid tickets, for fines, and when they get pulled away from their kids, nobody makes an allowance for what happens to that child when their parents are taken away from them. We have drug laws in this country that are so patently biased against low-income people and minorities. There were more marijuana arrests in 2017 and convictions for marijuana possession than all the violent crimes in our country combined. Except for they don't come onto Stanford's campus where there's a lot of drugs being used and do stings and stop and frisks on our campus. They target certain communities. So now you have people, parents, who are in prison for things that 2 of the last 3 presidents admitted to doing. And now their economic well-being, their ability to keep their children out of poverty, the ability to stay into their homes, is all hurt, and that child is facing that kind of trauma. Our housing laws are so bad. Your parents get evicted over $300, $400. You don't understand that when you pull a child out of their home that goes homeless or doubles and triples up, moving around schools, it affects that child. We do things to children in prison that are unconscionable. The first time I visited Rikers Island as a young man, I was stunned when I sat with the kids and asked them how long they'd been in. And it was 6 months, a year. And then I realized they hadn't even had their trial yet. And then we do something in this country to children in prison that is considered torture by psychological professionals. That's called juvenile solitary confinement. The criminal justice bill that passed through the Senate, when I left the Senate, the last thing I was fighting for, the last thing I was negotiating with the White House over, where we finally got in on the federal level, is a ban on juvenile solitary confinement, because I know this is an issue that I've grappled with at every level of my career, from a city council person and a mayor to a senator and a presidential candidate. We need to have systems that do not hurt our children like there are right now. We do not have a foster care system in this country that in any way is about a child-focused a system that focuses on child trauma and child well-being. My foster care, her experience with that foster system, just as anybody who has an experience with the foster system knows you should be investing in their children. Passed a piece of an education law through just to force states to start reporting data on their foster kids. So my commitment to you is I am going to completely transform juvenile justice in this country on a federal level. I will be putting a lot more money in those programs that are evidence-based programs that we know make a difference on every level. I will go back to doing the work that Obama just started doing, which is ending the school-to-prison pipeline.
On that grant,
yes.
it was fun.
And it was, as soon as we got a new administration, they did the moonwalk and backtracked on it. And so all of these things I am very familiar with. And I want to give you one last thing that we have to do. In our schools right now, we do not put the resources, in our schools right now, kindergarten teachers know that so many more kids are coming to school. There's one intervention that all the evidence shows can drive down child neglect, can drive down child abuse, can drive down a child's going to an emergency room, and that's a program called Nurse Family Partnerships. Where we know this, for every dollar invested in Nurse Family Partnerships, we as taxpayers save $5 or more on the cost of that family as they go through the system. That child does better in school. Guess what? The child and the mother's involvement with the police goes way down. This is my point to everybody in this room. It is not a matter of can we deal with these problems, it's do we have the collective will? And where does the will come to act? It comes from deeper empathy with the problems that are going on. There are no invisible people. It comes from that value I keep returning to, which is love. Start the question, yeah.
Okay. So I'm 17 years old, I'm a senior in high school, and probably about a third or a quarter of my friends who are seniors in high school or in college voted in the 2016 election, and even fewer voted in the 2018 midterm. So how do we get more young people involved in the election process and restore their faith in our democracy after the Trump administration?
I think that me and your chairperson, we would like to be honorary Generation Z people, because in our hearts, our activism is very similar to your generation, which is if you poll Generation Z folks, people that are your age, teenagers, early 20s now, they care about values, they care about morals, they care about everything from climate change, criminal justice reform, affordable college. It's amazing as I go sit with high school students how blown away I am by the values and moral policies. And so that's really wonderful that there is a generation there, because they're voting at rates that are unconscionably low. Now, number one, I just came from Atlanta. We've got to stop doing the things that's going on in many states. They're erecting walls that are making it harder for people to vote. College students not being able to vote on college campuses, making it difficult to make it to, which we should be able to do, vote by mail, or automatic voter registration. We've got to start changing the voter system to make it easier for people to vote. If you're graduating from high school, you should be automatically registered to vote. And there's a lot of things I'm going to do. And voting should be a national holiday. Because so it makes it a lot easier to vote, and I'm going to be a president who stands up using the technology and the tools to directly communicate with folks. But the last thing I want to say is, do not ask a 40-something what should be done to activate and engage teenagers, because you all have that responsibility. My favorite chapter of the Civil Rights Movement, you can read it in Taylor Branch's book, it's just one chapter, I think it's called The Children's Miracle, about how Martin Luther King, he was an old man in his 30s was having a difficult time winning in Birmingham against Bull Connor. And it was two young people, Dorothea Cotton and James Bevel, that went to him and said, basically, hey, you've got to change this system, you've got to allow young people to engage. And we organized young people from ages 8 to teenagers, and it was their standing up against dogs, they're standing up against fire hoses that awoke the moral imagination of the rest of the country. And every great movement, from Soweto all the way to Tiananmen Square, those people were standing in front of tanks. Young people have been at the center of great social change. I'm hoping that you will be a part of igniting your generation to take this country where it needs to go. Last question. And I'm number one. And I want to point out around real quick. These people getting married mad at me. Would you raise your hand? Mo Butler, he's my former chief of staff. People on my Nevada staff.
He's cutting into his selfie time.
Okay. Hold on. Eric, raise your hand. I want you all to know who my campaign staff is. Oh, Vanessa's right here. Look at these folks here, please. Afterwards, if you want to go hug them for having to deal with a hard-headed guy who's answering no question that we told him to answer. But let's go with the last one.
Cory, I have my name is Lisa Wood, and I have a couple of areas that I'm very passionate about. Kind of touched on some stuff already that you brought up. I worry about the vets a lot, and I also worry about the LGBT community. Something that people in here may not be aware of. 65%. It's a number that is pretty much all the way across the country. 65% of homeless youth and teenagers are LGBTQ, and it's a real scary situation. We don't have a place for them. They're homeless, and our vets are homeless. So now that ties in with medicine and et cetera, but for some of the kids, it's not as much medicine. Then we don't have places for these people to live. What are your thoughts on these things? They both concern me greatly.
And that's why I really hope, as you all evaluate your candidate, I've got some people willing to support me today, but please don't ask them about what they're going to do. Most of us who've been in these races have been around asking what we have done. So I've been not just a United States Senator, but I've also been a mayor of a city that all of these challenges you're talking about were ones I faced. So on LGBTQ issues, back in 2006 when I was elected, the first flag I raised in front of City Hall after the American flag, this was before leaders of our party hadn't quote evolved yet, I raised the pride flag. And immediately I got hate calls from people who said to me, you know, and by the way, they weren't anonymous hate calls, they told me exactly who they were. I'm gonna let you in our church again, and I said, I don't care. And I got so angry after that, I said, mayors have the power to marry, and I'm not gonna conduct one marriage here. I'm gonna marry anybody in City Hall until I can marry everybody in City Hall. Hold on, you guys are applauding because I got a call from my mom right away saying, Cory, please just marry one person. I want you, you're single, get married. And I said, Mom, I meant officiate weddings. I will not officiate any weddings. But more than that, knowing the crisis with LGBTQ youth, which is not new, this has been going on for generations, I said, I've got to do more on this problem. So the best model I found, because I always look around to see who's doing it right, was the Hetrick Martin Institute at Harvey Milk School in New York City, and I opened up their first national branch right across the Hudson River in New Jersey, in my own city, to make sure there was a safe place for LGBTQ kids to go. This has been my whole career, is passionately fighting for inclusion, because when people marched for my rights, there were gay folks and straight folks from all backgrounds. And so I am one of the senators, not just signed on, I'm one of the original co-sponsors of something called the Equality Act. It is outrageous in this nation that we have a country, like my parents, when they used to drive across country, they couldn't stop at certain public accommodations. We have a nation now that says you could be denied service at a hotel or a restaurant just because you're gay and you have no legal recourse. That you can put your picture of you and your same-sex spouse on your Facebook page and be fired from your job in the majority of states with no legal recourse. This is outrageous and this is unjust, and I'll do something about this. And this actually ties us right into the United States military. Because I will reverse the transgender ban on day one as president of the States. Those brave Americans who understand the country. And now going to our veterans, we literally sing the song that we are the home of the brave. It's the last words of our national anthem, but yet we have veterans homelessness rates that are outrageous. Again, as a mayor, I refuse to accept it. I had no authority over federal veterans issues, but I said enough. I created New Jersey's first one-stop for veterans issues in my city hall, so that every veteran didn't have to navigate a Byzantine labyrinth of services. They're disjointed and disconnected. They would find one spot in my city hall. We made it streamlined, and we were able to do a lot about veterans homelessness by building veterans housing. Now, I did that as a mayor, prioritized it, but as your president, God, I have a lot more powerful position. We are going to make sure that in this country, we don't just come up with trillions of dollars to send our soldiers overseas, and then come home and plead poverty that we don't have the money to create the housing and mental health care. Those men and women who have fought for us by having them come home to services they need. And I want to end with this, because there's so many issues that we didn't get to talk about here that are really important, like moms demand action. Please know my background. There's not an issue we're talking about that from the very beginning of my career I wasn't dealing with. In this case, gun violence, It's not a sometimes horrific mass shooting. It's an everyday problem in America. The Lord is one of those communities. The only person running for president of the United States that had a shooting on their block last year. Because I live in an inner city. Jihad Smith was killed. I'm tired of going to funerals where there are parents burying their children. I see shrines in my community on the sidewalk, candles and teddy bears, murdered children. I've sat there trying to stop a boy from bleeding to death who was shot in my neighborhood. Where is the compassion and empathy for us to do the things to save lives? When even the majority of NRA members believe that we shouldn't have a country where somebody can get convicted for beating their spouse and then could use a loophole to go out and buy a weapon and kill her. I have experiences in my life, veterans issues, LGBTQ issues, from running a city to crisis. And if I'm your president, I tell you, I'm going to bring a fight to the NRA like they have never seen. Expecting from presidential candidates, I'm going to put a warning on my presidency. Because if you have me as your president, just like this incredible 17-year-old said, I'm going to come back to you and ask for more. That's hard to say in a room full of activists that are on home today on Friday, but are actually in a room to hear a presidential candidate. But the opposite of justice is not always injustice. It's often apathy, indifference, and inaction. This person in front of me said hopelessness. I learned from a woman on the 5th floor of the projects whose child was murdered in the lobby of the building I would move into because I lived in those projects for almost 10 years. She never left those buildings. She had the money to move out, but she never did because she was going to stay and fight. She once told me that she was in charge of Homeland Security. She didn't wait for a title or a presidential appointment. She fought every day. Because she knew what hope was. Hope is the active conviction that despair